Welcome to the Pandemonium Witches podcast, where the ADHD has just a touch of the tism, where the true crime is just as scary as the hauntings and unsolved cases, and the hosts never stay on topic for long. I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
I'm Em. And I'm Meg.
We are the Pandemonium. Good morning.
Good morning.
We were flattering around with the video this morning because I don't like that our heads are at different heights. And Rachel's like, we're not recording yet. It's fine. And her head is like right here. So I'm like, I can't be that close. I have to be far enough from the computer. And I'm like, listen here, you little. Anyways.
Well, because I was just comfy hanging out in the chair. I was just watching.
What shirt are you wearing for our haunted month of October? Yes. We love Hocus Pocus. We love the Sanderson sisters. What am I doing? I'm looking for something.
Now that we situated back in the chair.
My brain cells. So we've already started picking up research for next year. Certain things that we want to cover. Today is October the 6th. If you guys didn't know, it is the first Monday of October, which means we are covering, I think, gotta move my phone because my phone is always on the taskbar on the bottom, so I can't see anything. Not what I wanted to say, but you know. Swear words. We can't say them yet. I mean, we can, but choose not to. Okay. Looking at the schedule. So today is the first topic of the 5. So we are discussing 5 international haunted hotspots from the top 10 list that we got from Google or whatever. I think it was AAA magazine or something like that. Anyways, where I verified that there is indeed a international one. Some of them are AI generated, so I had to go through and find the ones that weren't. So today, you already know what I'm talking about today because I've decided to take over the podcast for 4 straight episodes.
I was about to say you'd normally take over the podcast, but okay.
It is my podcast. It's our podcast,
Exactly.
but it's my podcast. But the timer on the dryer just went off, and I just went
as normal.
Right. So you've been to the place we're going to talk about today. I don't know if you've been to this. Have you been to this particular place?
I don't know. I've been to a lot of places, so this doesn't narrow it down at all.
Okay. Well, it's 3 minutes in. We can't just jump right into it. We're gluttons for punishment. We want to make you suffer just a little bit. Make them wait another 2 minutes more. They're probably going to skip forward to minute 5, and I'm going to be like, sucks for you. I'm going to wait another 2. Let's see here. What has been going on? Family drama, but that's every day.
That's routine business.
I have some stuff I'm going to make for Sam. So Sam and Dalen moved in together. They have their first apartment with their sister, and I'm going to be making them bowl cozies and placemats.
I love that.
Fortunately for us, I have everything already here, so I just got to bump it out. And then I got to make your stuff for your box, which is in the corner.
Which is a never-ending box.
She knows she's getting it for Christmas. She's well aware. She did not watch
It's a Mary Poppins box.
It is a Mary Poppins box. She didn't watch the episode where I was like, this is what her stocking looks like. She watched it, and then she said she didn't look at the stocking. So I'm very grateful.
No, I just listened to the audio.
Good. Excellent. You're going to love it because it literally is straight as a board. Like it doesn't bend at all. It's not floppy.
What's that thing? Something straight as a board.
Stiff as a board, light as a feather.
That one.
From The Craft. Guys, that doesn't actually work. But all right, whatever. So it's 5 minutes. Fuck. Okay, so
You were just counting down.
listen, I was. It's been a hell of a couple of days. I made a new recipe. Spam fried rice. That's all I want to eat right now. And that's okay because we're autistic and we have hyperfixations on foods. But today we're discussing Rachel's Roman Empire, which is the Tower of London. This is a Pandemonium Witches podcast trigger warning. The following episode contains graphic violence and gruesome depictions. Listener discretion is advised.
I was like, I have a few of them, so that wasn't narrowing it down at all.
Your main Roman Empire, the one that you share with Sylvia, is Titanic, which is the one that you also share with me, which is kind of funny because they have.
I enjoy history.
No, not that I find funny, not at that. They have the Titanic. What's the word? It's not. It's like a museum, but it's like
Interactive place.
Yeah, and they have it in Pigeon Forge in Tennessee, and I thought it was so funny. Why in the middle of It's because Tennessee has a shipbuilding area, and I didn't know that's where part of the Titanic was made. Yeah. No, I'll look it up. Hold on.
Like, that doesn't sound correct. I thought it was fully, like, maybe, like, parts of, like, the interior stuff, maybe? But I know, like, the ship was built in Belfast because that's where it was assembled. So.
Okay. The people that own the Titanic Museum, they also operate Dolly Parton's Stampede. And they were originally going to start it in Branson, Missouri, but there was a location that opened in Pigeon Forge. So it wasn't that. I'm wrong. It's fine. I tend to be wrong sometimes.
I'm like, that doesn't sound correct, but I'm going to let you roll with it.
Well, there's a thing on knoxnews.com, which is for Knoxville, Tennessee. No pop-ups. Why is there a Titanic museum in Pigeon Forge? Almost anything is possible in Pigeon Forge. It's true. It's the middle of the Appalachians, including touring one of the greatest ocean shipwrecks of all time. The Titanic Museum is located in the Great Smoky Mountains and is one of the most popular attractions in Pigeon Forge, which is true. Dollywood is also near that area as well. There are 400 artifacts, and most of them, if not all of them together, are worth an accumulated $4.5 million.
That's correct.
And you can have hands-on experience like shoveling coal in the boiler room and experience sloping decks of the ship as it sank. No thanks. I already
like they have it like set up to like certain degrees at what time. And also they have a area where you can submerge your hand into how cold the water was when the Titanic sank.
I would like that because I always run cold or hot, so that would just bring my temperature down. It'd be great. Last year in 2024, they acquired the wooden panel that Rose and Jack laid on, which, believe it or not, if he was the right weight and consistency, they both would have fit. But because of how much quote unquote larger she wasn't that large. She was a size 8. The door's density, yeah, no, it would have held them both.
James Cameron did the experiment to prove whether or not it would fit or would work or not. Could they fit? Yes. But they would have had to have been on their hands and knees on it, and it would have been slightly submerged, and so they would not have still lasted long because frostbite and their bodies would have shut down from all the shivering. The more you know.
Shooting star. So you actually produce more heat when you're shivering, when you're trying to get rid of that cold. When I did the Donner Party and Diet Love Pass episode, which was eons ago, we discussed that. But as we're hitting the 10-minute mark, because screw you guys. I waited until 10 minutes. We're going to discuss the 1,000-year history of the Tower of London. Yeah, you heard that correctly. 1,000. 1,000 years. It's an old piece of fucking shit. Side note, if you want architectural history, don't come here.
It's a lot.
There is a lot, okay? I was on the phone with her yesterday. I had to get rid of 10 pages. I was like, this is bullshit. So, do you have your hydration stations ready? Doing a little Vanna White.
Anna took my meds. Hope everybody else took theirs.
Oh, I took my meds too. Did I write it down? Hold on. I'm really bad about doing that. Because my doctor's like, have you been taking your meds? Let's check the phone. I did write it down. I changed my nighttime medication, so my body's just a little off. But while we're waiting for our party possums to come back, I did get notification from Michaela for the episode on Jeannie Jones that you did. Janine Jones.
Something like that.
Two days ago. Took me a second. We type a lot. I yawned. Excuse me.
And I had to sneeze. Perfect timing for both of us.
Perfect timing. She says, oh my God, I loved yesterday's video. I said, yeah, I'm so freaking glad. She's like, I'm so enraptured. Alcatraz is one of my favorite topics. I said, mine too. I said it was great living close by, but it's fucking haunted. We text a lot when we have time. Talking about shit. And then sent me booby cookies. They're supposed to look like eyeball cookies, but they ended up looking like boobs. Her response on Monday after listening to the episode. Janine Jones can suck a sandpaper cock and choke on it as it rips her insides out. I couldn't watch this one, but I'll rage with you. I said good morning to you too. I just snorted. Sorry, I saw a new video and I clicked. I said, yay! I'm glad. And fuck yes. So if you guys feel the same, please leave us comments. We like the comments, as my husband says, like and subscribe. I don't feel
Yes to both.
I don't feel the need to say that because if you guys want to stay, you'll stay. If you don't want to stay, you're not going to stay. But that video has 74. Alcatraz has 74 views.
Insanity. My dear, you are muted.
Janine Jones has 2.
I mean, it also just came out too.
Right. But anyways, let's talk about London. You've been to England.
A few times. Okay. I mean, Mom was born there. Mimi was born there. I have uncle and a great aunt that still live there. Cousins live there. We've been 3 times. Last time was in 2008. And then pre 9/11 were the first 2 times. Yeah, so we've been, it's great. Love the food. It feels like home away from home every time I go because, ancestral home. I don't know. What do you want to know?
I mean, I've been to England once. I went to Queensgate. We didn't get to stay in London. I got lost on the tube.
It can be very confusing, like most subway systems.
Well, right. I mean, I've gotten lost in New York before, so it wasn't my first rodeo getting lost, but it definitely was my most exciting. I do have to say, because a cute little goth girl saw me and she goes, "Oh, quite right. Okay. you lost? And I was like, uh-huh. She goes, where are you trying to go, love? And I was like, here. She's like, oh no, you're way off the bat. Okay, so you're gonna go here and then go, you know what? I'm just gonna take you. And she got me back on the tube, took me.
It was just easier than to give directions.
Right, and took me wherever I needed to go. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate it. So people over in London are great. It's kind of like living in the South. They will insult you to your face with a frickin' smile on, but it's the nicest insults ever. Because one of the guys, because we went with my ex and not me and my husband. No. This was like a decade and a half ago. And so funny because one of the guys, we were sitting having lunch, and all of a sudden he goes, "Wow, you're 4 berries loose of a full bushel, aren't you?" And I was like, "Me? No, honey, no, not you, dear. Him." And I was like, I have no idea what that means. Found out later it means that he was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And I was like, sounds about right. So today
it's like saying not the sharpest tool in the shed, or the sharpest crayon or pencil.
Crayon in the box, yeah.
Because like a bunch of other Southernisms, insults like that too.
My favorite one is that really salts my watermelon. Salted watermelon is delicious. I like it. Anyways, I dyed my hair green this morning because why not? But during its 900 years of existence, the Tower of London has earned the reputation of being one of the most haunted places in all of the UK. Its history spans almost 1,000 years, but the London Castle can fascinate and horrify. Because you have to remember, the Tower of London wasn't just a prison. It was also a castle. It housed royals.
So the Tower of London is not its actual name. It's His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London.
So 8 points down, the Tower of London, officially named His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London, as it's named.
Sorry.
Would you let me get there, please? I have to get through the too long didn't read first. Trey lives for that shit.
Okay.
Kuna, your damn tatas. Thank you. All right. So, when William the Conqueror built this stone tower in the center of his London fortress, which was the castle, he defeated medieval Londoners began to look at him in awe. Throughout history, it's also been a visible symbol of awe, but fear. Kings and queens imprisoned their rivals and enemies within its walls while living there subsequently. The stories of prisoners, rich and poor, still haunt the tower. It also has a richer, more complex history, having been home to a array of institutions, including, but not limited to, the Royal Mint, the Royal Armories, and even a zoo at one point. At the most secure castle of the land, the tower guarded royal possessions and even the royal family in times of war and rebellion. For 500 years, monarchs also used the tower as a surprisingly luxurious palace. As Rachel stated, and I did too, the Tower of London, named officially His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London, is a historic citadel and castle on the north bank of the River Thames in the London of England. Fun fact, London Bridge is not that far away from there. Also, fun fact, the nursery rhyme London Bridge is really about it falling down because it did fall down into disgusting water that had poop and urine and a bunch of other shit in it and dead bodies, and it was horrible.
But that's a topic for another day.
Which we did get requested, and we will be covering next season gothic and graphic nursery rhymes and their...
Okay on it.
I know. That's your whole thing. Like, do that. I'm also helping my kid write a fairy tale about the Grimms.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
It's the one that's been in the back of my head for ages. She's running with it.
Can't wait.
It's so good. So, the tower lies within the London borough of Tower Hamlets, which is separated from the eastern edge of the square mile of the city of London by the open space known as Tower Hill. So the tower was oriented with the strongest and most impressive defenses overlooking Saxon London. It would have visually dominated the entire surrounding area and stood out to traffic on the River Thames. Because that's where most people came through to get to London, was through the Thames. The castle is made up of 3 wards or enclosures. Yes, I use this for 3 and not this because I've broken my hand too.
It means different things.
It means different things. So this means W. It also means other things in sign language. So the innermost ward contains the White Tower and is the earliest phase of the castle. To the north, east, and west is the inner ward, built when Richard I was king, which is 1189 to 1199. The outer ward, which encompasses the castle and was built under Edward I, although there were several phases of expansion after William the Conqueror founded the Tower of London and His Majesty's Royal Palace. That is just a mouthful, so we're just going to be with Tower of London. I love you, but no. The general layout has remained the same since Edward I completed the rebuild in 1285. The castle encloses the area of almost 12 acres, with the further 6 acres around the Tower of London, constituting the Tower Liberties, land under direct influence of the castle and cleared for military reasons. The precursor of the Liberties was laid out in the 13th century when Henry III ordered that a strip of land adjacent to the castle be kept clear. Fun fact, before I continue, despite popular fiction, movies, comics, and shorts, the Tower of London has never been a permanent torture chamber. Although the basement of the White Tower housed a rack in later periods, Tower Wharf was built on the bank of the Thames under Edward I and was expanded to its current size during the reign of Richard II in 1377 to 1399. Guys, there are torture things in the Tower of London. People did die there, which we will discuss later because it is freaking haunted. But, this is the main point of contention for Rachel that she wanted me to give to you guys. It's not just a torture chamber. It's historical.
Thank you.
Did I get it right?
Yeah, basically. Because it was just a holding place for the prisoners. They would take them off site to the tortures and then would bring them back.
He's like, what are you doing? Well, we're off schedule, so we're recording.
We're talking about murder.
Technically, not yet. Anyways, so His Majesty's Palace and the Tower was completely founded at the end of 1066 as a part of the Norman conquest. If you guys want me to get into that, I can. But again, this is a haunted podcast, not a history podcast. If you want that, what's that one chick you follow on Instagram and TikTok?
There's a few that do history.
One that goes on about Anne Boleyn and her sister all the time.
Can't remember what it is right now. Let me go deep dive on that.
You do that. We'll give you the name as soon as she finds it. The White Tower, which gives the entire castle its name, was built by William the Conqueror in 1078 and was initially a resented symbol of oppression inflicted by the tower of the new Norman ruling class. It's a keep, which is often the strongest structure in the medieval castle, and contains lodgings suitable for a lord, in this case, the king and its representatives.
Did you mean Viola Swamp? She's on TikTok. Nurse.ratchet with 2 T's at the end.
What does she look like? Let me see. No.
Well, Viola Swamp also goes on and on about Tudor history and stuff. So she's really cool. She also hates the author that's living. I like Philippa Gregory, something like that. Yeah. But back to my deep dive.
Well, okay. Fresh from his victory, William the Conqueror began to build the entire fortress. to defend and proclaim his royal power. It took about 20 years for him to build. Not him. No. It was masons. They arrived from Normandy, bringing with them stone and cane from France. And I'm not talking about cane like the sugar. It's spelled C-A-E-N. It's a type of stone. Most of the actual labor was lower workforce and provided by Englishmen. Nothing like it had ever been seen in England before, and he intended his castle to not only dominate the skyline, but also help with the Londoners that felt defeated and bring more joy and peace to their life. That's not how you do that. Anyways, so throughout history, it's been adapted and developed to defend and control the nation. So the tower measures as thus. It is 32 by 36 meters or 118 feet by 105 feet at the base and 27 meters or 90 feet high at the southern battlements. It was originally 3 stories high, comprising of a basement floor, an entrance level, and an upper floor. It was typical of castles of the day. The bottom floor was an undercraft used for storage, which is what typical basements of that time used. And one of the rooms, fun fact, contained a well, which I was like, that's how you get dead. Although the layout remained the same since the tower's construction, the interior of the basement dates mostly from the 18th century, when the floor was lowered and the pre-existing timber vaults were placed with brick counterparts. The basement is lit through small slits in the walls, which you can actually see on the battlements or whatever. The entrance floor was, words are hard, okay? The entrance floor was intended for the use of the constable of the tower, lieutenant of the Tower of London, and other important officials. And I put, side note, guys, I wrote a history of how it was created, and he gave me 30 pages on just that alone. So if you want to deep dive on architecture, by all means, but it made my head hurt. So moving on to more interesting topics. The castle was also used as a prison from 1100, off Flambard, Bishop of Durham, until 1952 with the Grey twins. Although it was not its primary purpose, a grand palace early in its history, it served as a royal residence. So there were several phases of expansion, mainly under Kings Richard I, Henry III, Edward I, in 12th and 13th centuries. Henry III and his son Edward I expanded William's fortress, adding a huge curtain or defensive walls with a series of smaller towers and enlarging the moat to be double or triple the size. They transformed the tower into England's largest and strongest concentric castle, which has one ring of defenses inside the other, kind of like a bullseye. In 1240, Henry III had the tower's great keep painted white, making it known as the White Tower. Inside the tower, the kings built a magnificent medieval palace. They stayed here with their queens, Eleanor of Provence, which was Henry's queen, and Eleanor of Castile, Edward's queen. 2 different Eleanors. Same name. Kind of cool.
Lots of names repeated over the years.
Did you know, in all of my medieval history stuff from college up until now, Tiffany is not a modern name. It was actually used in the 14 and 1700s as well.
It was just spelled differently.
The one of the spellings is the one that I have in book 3, Tyffanee. And I was like, it's Tiffany. Everybody thinks that she's a bobble-headed idiot. She's not. She's strong. She don't need no man. She gets 3. Anyways, the tower is a complex of several buildings set within 2 rings of defensive walls and a moat. The general layout established by the late 13th century remains despite later activity on the site. So in 1483, shortly after the death of Edward IV, the notorious murder of the princes in the tower is traditionally believed to have taken place. So it's one of the most infamous events associated with the Tower of London. Edward V's uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, was declared Lord Protector, stating that the prince was too young to rule. He was 12. Traditional accounts have been held that the 12-year-old Edward was confined to the Tower of London along with his younger brother, Richard. Now, there have been points of conspiracy that brother Richard made it out and that he changed his name. Was it George or something like that? I think you were the one that sent it to me. where there was like a church on the outskirts of England, out in the lowlands, something like that. But she sent it to me, and I was like, that makes sense with the conspiracy theories that I heard growing up from friends. So the Duke of...
I was about to jump ahead and then I bit my tongue. Please continue.
So the for those of you who don't know, I put a picture of the Swedish chef every time I get tongue-tied. There was one episode where I think it was in there like 6 or 7 times. The Duke of Gloucester was proclaimed King Richard III in June. The princes were last seen in public that June of 1483. And it has traditionally been thought that the most likely reason for their disappearance is that they were murdered in the late summer of 1483. Bones thought to belong to them were discovered in 1674 when the 12th century fore building at the entrance of the White Tower was demolished. However, the reputed level as which the bones were found, 10 feet or 3 meters, would have put the bones at a depth similar to that of a Roman graveyard found in 2001, which was 12 feet or 4 meters underneath the Minories a few hundred yards to the north. Opposition to Richard escalated until he was defeated at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485 by the Lancastrian Henry Tudor, who ascended the to the throne as Henry VII. I have to do counting with Roman numerals, guys. As King Henry VII built a tower for a library next to the King's Tower. What were you going to say about the two princes? Because I think I talk about it later, but go ahead.
No, I'll wait. It's fine. It's about recent DNA stuff. I didn't want to jump ahead if you were going to
I talk about it on page 6.
Okay, then I'll wait.
So we can talk about it again later. But no, we jumped all the way back to the beginning. Son of a biscuit. Okay, hold on.
This is why you wanted me to look up who she was, so I would be busy.
Listen! No, I love your interactions and your... Shut up.
It's okay.
I still love you. So, it played a prominent role in English history when it comes to wars and sieges. It was besieged several times. Not, I beseech you. No, besieged with a G, not a CH. Controlling it has been important to controlling the entire country because you can see everything from there, or used to be anyways. The tower's defenses failed only once, and it was during the Peasants' Revolt of 1381 where rebels ran through the open gates. Again, not a history channel. Go find that somewhere else. We're just doing the basic history, and then we'll go into the haunted shit. So, it has served variously as an armory, a treasury, a menagerie, home of the Royal Mint, public record office, and home of the crown jewels of England. So I have to type out their handles. Got it. I'll type out their handles. It's no big deal.
Type them out. I was just screenshotting them for later.
Oh, okay. I do follow History on Crack. And I follow Lady B. History Alice. I follow her. History with Henry. History with Amy. I do that. That's all on Instagram. I don't really do TikTok anymore. Once upon a time in history, I do follow them on TikTok. And Dr. Amy, I follow her on TikTok and on Instagram. Okay, so.
Topic.
You got any more of that history? So.
Yes, we do.
From the early 14th century until the reign of Charles II in the 17th century, the monarch would traditionally prepare for several nights at the Tower and lead a procession from there to Westminster Abbey for their coronation. In the absence of a monarch, the Constable of the Tower was in charge of the castle. So this was a powerful, trusted position in the medieval period, and in the late 15th century, the princes in the Tower were housed at the castle when they mysteriously disappeared and they presumed dead. Under the Tudors, the great show, by the way, Historically accurate costumery, I do have to say, not historically accurate talking.
Exactly.
Under the Tudors, the tower was used less as a royal residence, despite attempts to refortify and repair the castle, because its defenses lagged behind developments to deal with artillery and things that were uh, redeveloping. The Tower of London has also been an infamous setting in the stories of royal tragedy and death, along with Anne Boleyn, Henry VI, during the War of the during the War of the Roses. Henry VI was murdered here in 1471, and later the children of his great rival Edward IV, the princes, vanished within its walls in 1483. So in 1485, the beginning of the Tudor period, this marked the decline of the tower and its use as the royal residence. And a 16th century chronicler and researcher, Raphael Holinshed, said the tower became used more as an armory and a house for ammunition, and therefore a place for safekeeping of offenders, rather than a place for royal king, queen, or anyone to sojourn it. Henry the Seventh visited the tower on 14 occasions between 85 and 1500, usually staying for less than a week at a time. The yeoman warders, on the other hand, are who I find the most fascinating out of all of the topic that I researched. They have been the royal bodyguards since 1509. 1517, the tower fired its first cannon at city crowds engaged in xenophobic evil May Day riots. Fun fact, did you know that May Day was originally performed as a fertility ritual?
Did because druids.
It was also to honor the goddess Ostara, which was the beginning of spring equinox, who was the goddess of fertility and life and pregnancy, among other things.
She wore a crown of many labels.
She did. This the properties of foreign residents were looted during these May Day riots, and it was not thought that any rioters were hurt by cannon or gunfire, which probably meant merely just to intimidate the mob. And we're not talking about the Sopranos, guys. We're talking about like an actual angry mob. Okay, they're vengeful with their torches and pitchforks. Anyways, in the 1500s, as a protector of the crown jewels and home of the yeoman warders, also known as beef eaters. What a name. Anyways,
do you want to explain why they're called beef eaters?
I did not get that.
Hold on, let me double check my facts really quick and I'll come back.
So they are the legendary guardians, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. They're the legendary guardians and the pampered ravens. The tower now attracts over 3 million visitors a year. The yeoman warders, recognized as symbols of the tower all over the world, have been here for centuries. They're originally part of Yeomen of the Guard, the monarch's personal bodyguard who traveled with him. Henry VIII decreed that some of them would stay and guard the tower permanently. What's the thing for Henry VIII?
The one that killed all of his wives, except for like 2? No, 3. Had 6 wives, murdered half of them.
I think this is it. Nope, that's not it.
I know the little jaunty to remember the order of
Beheaded
wives.
died, divorced, beheaded, survived.
Yes.
Also, if you haven't seen Six the Musical, I heard it's fabulous. I'm seen it.
Yes, Dr. Sister absolutely loved it. It is on my to go see list.
Did I tell? Okay, off topic because we're about to talk about some pretty gnarly shit here. My husband bought me Wicked for my birthday, the movie, and Wicked 2 comes out in a couple of months, and he's already told me that I can buy it. I'm very excited. Okay, so the early 1500s The Tower acquired an enduring reputation as grim and a forbidding prison, or foreboding, as it were. This has not always been the case. As a royal castle, it was used by the monarch to imprison people for various reasons, mainly people who were close to the royal court. These were high status individuals for short periods of time, rather than like common prisons where people can just go into those prisons. They were just for common citizens. Contrary to the popular image of the Tower, prisoners were able to make their life easier by purchasing certain amenities, such as better food, tapestries, books, even slippers, through the lieutenant of the Tower. I don't have COVID. The trees are fucking. Anyways, as holding prisoners was originally an incidental role of the Tower, there was no purpose-built accommodation for prisoners until 1687, when a brick shed known as a prison for soldiers was built into the northwest of the White Tower.
Okay, so wanted to double check. While the name Beefeater is of uncertain origin, there are a few possible reasons. One of which comes from the Grand Duke of Tuscany, who visited the court in 1669. Referring to the yeomen of the guard, he stated, "A very large ration of beef is given to them daily at the court. They might be called beef eaters because it was given to them as part of their pay. So a large chunk of meat."
Be given a large chunk of meat as pay. I would like to take 50 pounds of prosciutto.
It was then carried over to the yeoman warders due to the two corps' outward similarities and the yeoman warders' more public presence. Beef eaters is also most commonly produced and consumed broths made of beef, which were described as rich and hearty. So that's why they might have also been called that, because they were very solid guys.
I mean, the yeomans that work now are still pretty solid, like, guys. They still have to stop people from breaking in.
Yes. So to become a yeoman of the Tower, you have to like make a certain rank, have served so long in His Majesty's military. Like, you have to achieve multiple things to make that placement. And also there has to be a spot open to make that placement.
Know that there were some guys that have been working there for 30 some odd years.
Yeah, most of the time they retire from that when they want to, essentially, like when they feel like they can no longer do a good job. That is like retirement goals.
I just want to be fed 50 pounds of prosciutto. Who doesn't want 50 pounds of prosciutto?
That's valid.
If you say it's you, then we can't be friends. Anyways, so I know it's not you. You like prosciutto. We've discussed this in length. So the Tower's reputation for torture and imprisonment comes from the 16th century religious propagandists and the 19th century romanticists. Much of it is exaggerated, but the 16th and 17th century, which is the 15 and 1600s, marked the castle's zenith as a prison. And many religious and political undesirables were actually locked away, including but not limited to the fake princess, which we talked about on an earlier episode with Catherine the Terrible. Not Catherine the Terrible. You know who I'm talking about. The Blood Duchess.
Yes.
But Catherine the Terrible was a terrible person, but she was a pirate warlord who, told all of her mates, you can't rape, you can't pillage, you can't do anything but loot. And if you decide to go against my word, I will stick your head on the barge. And she did just that. Anyways, back to the topic. The Privy Council was sanctioned to use torture, so it was not often used. Between 1540 and 1640, at the peak of imprisonment of the Tower, there were 48 recorded cases of torture. Ew. I burped and it tasted funny in that topic. So the three most common forms used were the infamous rack, the scavenger's daughter, and manacles. Do you know what the scavenger's daughter is?
I think so. But tell us for those that don't.
Thanks for asking. Well, it was a brutal torture device invented in the 16th century England, used during the reign of Henry VIII. Its name is a grim pun on its inventor, Leonard Skevington, who was a lieutenant at the Tower of London. The device is the opposite of the rack, where it stretched a person. The scavenger's daughter compacted and compressed a person's body. It was essentially a metal A-frame or shackle, known as Skevington's gyves. And it forced a victim's body into an excruciatingly tight, doubled over position, often where their head was pulled towards their feet. And the intense pressure would force blood from the victim's ears, nose, and sometimes hands, feet, and eyes.
I feel like that's a different way of snapping their spine.
Believe it or not, yes. The look on my face is just absolute. That one nurse, what is it, Nurse Sam? Yep. There it is.
Yep.
So, the rack was introduced to England in 1447 by Duke of Exeter, the constable of the tower at the time, and consequently it was known it was also known as Duke of Exeter's daughter. So there's that. Kings and queens used the tower in times of trouble to protect their possessions and themselves. Medieval kings and queens lived in luxurious apartments that were at the tower. They worshipped in Chapel Royal, kept a menagerie of exotic animals, which lasted until about the 19th century, and welcomed foreign rulers at large ceremonial occasions. Although long since vanished, there was once a royal palace to the south of the White Tower, and King Henry VIII modernized the rooms inside in preparation for the coronation of his new bride, Anne Boleyn, in 1533. She and the king feasted here in the splendor of the night before and processed in triumph through the city of London to Westminster Abbey when they were wed. 3 years later, Anne was back at the Tower, this time accused of adultery and treason. That was not the case.
Which were absolutely lies. But
Right.
she made a very large circle back into place.
So she was executed by sword on the Tower Green. But not all queens died here at the hands of an executioner, although some of them did. Elizabeth of York died giving birth at the Tower. It was said that her husband, Henry VII, was so grief-stricken at her death that his hair turned white.
He did not get married after that. Even though it started off as a arranged marriage, it turned into a love marriage.
And I mean, a couple of my friends have arranged marriages and they are still married to those spouses and they love them. But it's one of those things where it was out of convenience and necessity. And now they just love each other. But at first it was a bit questionable. But, I mean, we've had long talks about that. So in the 1600s, among those held and executed at the Tower was Anne Boleyn. Although the yeoman wanderers were once royal bodyguard by the 16th and 17th century, their main duty had become to look after the prisoners, as well as the crown jewels, which were still housed. But riddle me this, Batman. Why would you house your crown jewels, your possessions that are covered in gold and gems, where you house your fucking prisoners? Make it make sense.
Because that was the only safe place in the area to house both.
Lies. My grandfather
But
kept
also-
money in his mattress. Lies.
But also, the crown, the jewels were in a very secure room while the prisoners were in the basement in very secure rooms that had very little light and access.
I mean, I'm just
So both
thinking.
worked.
I'm just thinking about it. It's kind of like the Blood Duchess situation where she was given a candle, but only allowed to use it when she ate. So it's like, no. So the Tower was often a safer place than other prisoners in London, such as the Fleet, where disease was riddled. and high-status prisoners could live in conditions comparable to those they might expect outside. One such example was Walter Raleigh. You know who that is, right? Okay.
Of course we do.
For those of our listeners, I didn't even look this up. I know who it is. Walter Raleigh was an English statesman, soldier, writer, and explorer, one of the most notable figures of the Elizabethan era, and he played part of English colonization of North America, known as Sir Walter Raleigh, and he put a lot of the East Coast on the map, as it were. Anyways, excuse me. Oh, I got really bad cough there. Anyways, Sir Walter Raleigh was held in the Tower. His rooms were altered to accommodate his entire family, including his son, who was born there in 1605. Executions were usually carried out on Tower Hill rather than in the Tower of London itself, and 112 people were executed on the hill over the course of 400 years. But before the 20th century, there had been 7 executions inside the castle itself on the Tower Green, as was the case not only with Anne Boleyn, but with Lady Jane Grey. This was reserved for prisoners whom public execution was considered dangerous and unlawful. After Lady Jane Grey's execution on February 12th of 1554, Queen Mary I imprisoned her sister Elizabeth, who later became Queen Elizabeth I, in the Tower under suspicion of causing a rebellion, as Sir Thomas Wyatt had led a revolt against Mary in Elizabeth's name. You're making a face.
Well, so also because she could monitor Elizabeth's activities so well in the Tower.
She was
whereas if
paranoid.
free.
She was so paranoid.
Well, because if she didn't have a child, Elizabeth was her heir. And so she literally watched their father marry and dispose of women like nobody's business. So if she did not have a child, everything goes to Elizabeth, and she was trying to make England Catholic and it cement back into Catholicism. And she knew that if Elizabeth got the crown, she was not going to go back into Catholicism. So like it was just a very chaotic and stressful time for Mary. And at that point, she was also older in age. She was having phantom pregnancies left and right. And it turns out that she probably had PCOS and endometriosis. And it ended up, they think that the pregnancy that she finally went into her lay-in state for, it ended up being a tumor that ended up killing her. But yeah, a little random knowledge.
I mean, none of this stuff is stuff that I know. You know, I mean, you ask me stuff about California, Oregon, and Washington, I got you. Stuff about overseas, Italy, certain things. I was wrong about the Bridge of Sighs, but that's besides the point.
Really like European history.
I know. We've discussed on many lengths. And there was one day I didn't have the spoons for like anything, and she's like, "Did you know?" And went on a 2-hour long.
And you're just like, I'm just let her ramble.
Just gonna let her go, get it out. And I was like, "Do you feel better? Great. I'm gonna go to sleep." And you were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I was like, No, it's fine. I'm okay. I don't have
My bad.
So, one of those that was tortured at the Tower was Guy Fawkes. You guys remember the 5th of November, the smell of gunpowder and lead. That comes from Guy Fawkes, and Guy Fawkes is an actual person in history, not just a character on V for Vendetta. He was brought there on November 6th of 1605. After torture, he signed a full confession to the gunpowder plot, which was an actual thing. Here's the history for the princes. I only have one small little new tidbit. It was from 1933, and it was proved to be that the boys were measured to be ages 12 and 10, the exact ages of the princes when they disappeared. I get more information about them later, but it's primarily about their names and their history and what they like to do. But anyways, what was your thing you wanted to tell us about the princes?
Oh, so after they discovered with modern DNA analysis and everything, a lot of people were trying to pressure the royal family into submitting a DNA sample to basically, essentially,
exclusionary purposes.
Well, yes, to see if that was actually if there was anything to tie DNA with. And if not, then they could go from there. And Queen Elizabeth II absolutely refused to do it, which is her right. But King Charles has stated that, yes, he would be interested in doing it because...
Shut the door, really?
Because he loves archaeology and that stuff and history. So he's always been he's
been a huge supporter
yes.
of uncovering history, and he did allow on the southern port of Scotland those archaeologists to go and dig those those Viking longhouses that they ended up discovering out there,
and also finding King Richard buried in the parking lot. He gave DNA sample for that. I'm going to double check to see about if the boys are actually princes in the tower.
I had 20 seconds, otherwise my bladder was going to pop.
Okay, so as of right now, the DNA has not confirmed about the princes due to refusal from the Church of England and other royal authorities, because they were denied due to concerns about setting a precedence, the potential embarrassment of negative results for, saying if the bones weren't the princes, what kind of things would happen, and that the test wouldn't solve the core mystery of what actually happened to them.
The only thing I remember about the Princes of London is I remember that Goosebumps episode where the two boys went into the tower and he was like fearful of his life or whatever. And then he wakes up and they're no longer in the tower. They're actually like outside and they're about to go in and they're like, come on, lads, let's go inside. And they were like, no, we're good. And I was like, that's horrible. But then again, that's Stephen King.
Right. Yes. No. Stephen King did not do Goosebumps. So King Charles actually had the boys interred into Westminster Abbey, but the testing was denied in 2013. So while Queen Elizabeth was still alive. But Charles had them buried and was just like, let's just lay them to rest. They've had enough speculation. They deserve a proper burial instead of being shoved under stairs.
They're not Harry Potter. Why would they be shoved under the stairs?
So they were shoved into essentially a little staircase under the stairs that was then bricked up. You didn't know that?
No. Tell me more. I got the condensed history. I got the condensed history of the tower. I didn't want to go into big detail about like where everything was, like the stuff in the torture chambers or whatever. I didn't want to go into detail on that because Michaela said, ew, can we not on certain things? And I was like, that's totally fine. We can like not discuss, gruesome things. I totally can get on board with that. However, is that I didn't know about that.
Well, so I can do a deep dive for it next season since it is a murder. Well, I mean, not murder, question marks. It was a murder. They were murdered. So I can definitely do that and just be like, we still don't have answers. Sorry, guys. The bodies.
Hopefully by then we'll be able to have some sort of answer on whether or not it is truly them.
I don't know if they ever will, just because it's so long. But they were placed in an urn in Westminster Abbey. But yeah, the bones were possibly the boys, possibly servant boys. They don't know, but the bones match the ages of what the princes would have been, but we don't know for sure because all that's left is bones.
Well, and the great thing about what all the stuff that I researched in college, because I did go to college for about 12 years. I was this close to graduating with my AA and my BA, which, I'm still pretty upset about, but that's a topic for a different day. But like, they can still find about information on those bones and what diet they had and everything like that by pulling bone marrow out of the actual bones, as long as the bones have not been heated up or condensed, as it were, because they were able to find out a diet of somebody who they found in the Viking Age era, and they thought it was a man, but it was really a woman. And so she was interred in this large burial plot, and she had dogs with her, and a man was buried with her, and they thought it was anyways. I will be on my soapbox all day about that. We're going to go back to the topic at hand.
So they were first found in 1674, and then essentially messed with again 1933, and then again more closer to present day. So people kept messing with them. So there's no telling what kind of state the bones are in now. So I think Charles did the right thing by just going, nope, we're just going to bury them, lay them to rest, and not touch them again. So I do think that was the best thing.
I think it was a good thing for him to do, and it's also respectful as well. Don't disturb the dead guys. So
back on topic.
So we talked about Sir Walter Raleigh and Elizabeth Throckmorton, which were held prisoner there. This use was led to the phrase sent to the Tower, for quote unquote timeouts or whatever. Despite its reputation as a place of torture and death, popularized by 16th century religious persons and 19th century writers, only 7 people in the world total were executed at the Tower. Executions were held on Tower Hill, as we talked about. Anthony Salvin and John Taylor took the opportunity to restore the Tower to what was to be felt its medieval appearance, clearing out many of the post-medieval structures. And in the 1700s and 1800s, over the 18th and 19th centuries, the palatial buildings were slowly adapted for other uses or demolished. Only the Wakefield and St. Thomas Towers survived. The 18th century also marked an increasing interest in England's medieval past and its tortured past. One of the effects was the emergence of Gothic revival architecture. Arms and armor were made and tested and stored there until the 18th, and all coins of the entire realm of the crown were made at the Tower Mint until 1810. And the new horse armory was built in 1825 against the south face of the White Tower. It features elements of Gothic revival architecture, such as battlements. Other buildings were remodeled to match the style, and Waterloo Barracks were described as castellated Gothic of the 15th century. Between 1845 and 1855, institutions like the Mint were inhabited at the castles for centuries, moved off-site. Many of the post-medieval structures were left vacant or demolished. So in 1855, the War Office took over responsibility for manufacture and storage weapons from the Ordnance Office, which was gradually phased out of the castle. At the same time, there was a greater interest of the history of the Tower of London. So people were starting to ask more questions. But that's when the First and Second World Wars came around. And the tower was again used as a prisoner and witnessed executions of 12 men for espionage. What?
They also held some German POWs there too.
Small tidbit. After the Second World War, damage caused during the Blitz was repaired and the castle was reopened to the public.
Yes, the Blitz. What Mimi lived through because her mother refused to send her and her sisters out to the countryside.
What?
I told you this. She was born in 1940.
I remember, but it still shocks me. Not only did they house German POWs, they also housed Italian POWs as well as certain French people who sympathized. I didn't want to get onto that topic because I wrote the note and then I crossed it out and I said, soapbox for another day. That's fair. So since 1990, the Tower of London has been cared for by an independent charity called Historic Royal Palaces. They have an Instagram and a TikTok. I follow both accounts. Did you?
They also have web pages. Majority of the historical places in the UK are listed with them. And it's really cool. And they make sure that they take care of everything that they can. They get help from the government, I want to say. Like, it's really cool. Like, y'all need to go check out their websites, like, or their webpage. It's really cool.
Such an Instagrammable
photo of Fluffy.
Look at that. Look at the little fluffster. My goodness.
She is knocked out.
She is knocked out. So, 1988, the Tower of London was added to the UNESCO list of World Heritage Sites in recognition of its global importance and to help conserve and protect the site. However, in recent developments, such as, but not limited to, the construction of skyscrapers nearby, it's pushed the tower towards being added to the United Nations Heritage in Danger list. The remains of the medieval palace has been open to the public since 2006, where visitors can actually explore the restored chambers. The hallways, which is why I wasn't able to go, are very, very small and narrow. I am a fat bitch, okay? I am a thick girl.
Which makes you wonder how the hell they navigated the women navigated the hallways with their hoops and everything.
Carefully. Very carefully. So, although the position of the constable at the tower remains the highest position held at the tower currently, responsibility of day-to-day administration is delegated to the resident governor. The constable is appointed to a 5-year term. This is primarily a ceremonial post, but the constable is also the trustee of the historical royal palaces and of the royal armories. So, as of recently, General Sir Gordon Messenger was appointed constable in 2002. So, one of the most famous legends surrounds Rachel's favorite topic and my most beloved companion, the ravens. The story says that should ravens leave the tower, both it and the kingdom shall fall.
I believe it's if all the ravens leave.
If any. So if they die or they pass away, that's normal. But if it says, should the ravens leave, so any or all, that's the...
I believe the belief was if they all left, and so that they routinely, if a raven now is unhappy, they bring in another one, get them trained and everything. The photos I sent you are the red poppies that they started doing for the anniversaries, which is really cool because they come down one of the windows and they spread out into the moat.
And I'll share it. I have a red poppy button that I got it's from the 70s. And it's an old style steel one, but the 6 ravens that are kept at the tower at all times in accordance with the belief that if they are absent, the kingdom will perish. They're under the care of, coolest name ever, the Raven Master, which is one of the yeoman warders. As well as having ceremonial duties, the yeoman warders provide guided tours around the tower. And you can learn more about the ravens and fun facts on the Tower of London on their official TikTok, historic.royal.palaces, as well as their Instagram, which is just Historic Royal Palaces. The ravens all have names, though. And I did know that 2 of them are married. They are coupled up, and it's adorable. Okay, so the names of the current tower ravens are Harris, Jubilee, Poppy, Edgar, Georgie, Chaos, Henry, and Poe. Ravens are very intelligent creatures. They do hold grudges for generations, just to let you guys know. My ravens loved me. They hated my neighbor. Not the neighbors that live directly like downstairs and next door, the one that always invited me for bonfires. The neighbors that lived behind us over and to the left, they were a bunch of dicks. Anyways, so they can mimic sounds, play games, solve problems, and they have their own personalities. So as of May of this year, they are home to 8 ravens. At the least, there were 6 ravens. But they don't fly. They can kind of fly a little bit, but they don't fly very far. Today, the Tower of London is one of the country's most popular tourist attractions, and it's become established as one of the most popular and haunted attractions in all of London. It's been seen as a tourist attraction since at least the Elizabethan period, and it gained popularity with tourists through the 19th century, despite some of the opposition from the Duke of Wellington. So numbers became so high by 1851, a purpose-built ticket office was built. By the end of the century, over 500,000 were visiting the castle every year. Today, yeoman warders guard visitors, but they can still carry out ceremonial duties, such as unlocking and locking the tower every day in the ceremony of the keys.
It's pretty cool to watch. I have never been able to watch the Ceremony of the Keys myself, but I've seen videos on it, and it's so cool.
The one thing I didn't get to see was the changing of the guard. I really wanted to see that. But I hung out with a gothic dothy mommy all day, so I think it was okay. I think
you had the better experience.
I think so. So not only does the Ceremony of the Keys live on, as well as several ghost stories, they still wear the red state dress uniforms for important occasions at the tower. They have their normal day-to-day uniforms, which I'll post pictures of. But they do special events such as firing a huge cannon on the wharf, known as gun salutes. There's also a yeoman for the keeper of the Jewel House, known as the resident governor of the Tower of London and keeper of the Jewel House. Okay, so not only that, the yeoman warders live on the area of the Tower of London with their families, the resident governor, and the garrison of soldiers. There's a docker, a little market, a chaplain, and a pub. And they have little housing things. It's so cool. So, that being said,
that way the only thing they have to go outside the tower for is groceries, essentially. Everything else is all right there.
So visitors, of course, and Rachel Morbid Mosey over here, are fascinated by the stories of England's turbulent and torturous past. So there are quite a few ghosts that haunt the tower. We're going to start with the first and most famous one, Anne Boleyn. She's the most persistent out of all the ghosts at the Tower of London. And she was married to King Henry VIII, arrested and taken to the Tower Green and beheaded on May 19th, 1536. She was beheaded for treason, and her ghost supposedly haunts the Church of St. Peter, which is the chapel there, at Vinicula in the tower where she is buried. She is said to walk around the White Tower carrying her head under her arm. So this haunting is commemorated by a comic song written in 1934 with her head tucked underneath her arm. That's the title of the song. She is said to haunt and stalk the site of her execution on the Tower Green. Several sightings of her have been reported, and she appears close to the site where she was executed, and also has been seen leading a procession down the aisle from the chapel to the Tower Green. They have also reported to seeing her headless body float down the tower corridors.
I mean, she lost her head there, so I mean...
Literally.
But her ladies in waiting, it's said that she got shoved into like a chest, but they refused to let any of the men touch her, which is a great idea because men are known for doing awful things to women's bodies when they're alive, let alone when they're dead. So they made sure that she went directly from the execution site to the chapel and was buried before they finally left.
I mean, there's also, this has been a big point of contention for Holly, is that it was a conspiracy and that she actually was whisked away under the thief of night, because they were all executed at night. All of his wives were executed at night, not in the morning. They were executed at nightfall. And I'm just like,
Yeah, in
how?
the evening, because that way there would be less of a crowd.
Yep.
Like, I wish she had been whisked away, but unfortunately she was not.
So that being said, the next one is Arabella Stewart. Beautiful name, by the way. Can I just say that? She is one of the most famous ghosts because she's apparently very popular. Ooh. I am an old lady and I go to bed early. For those of you who don't know, I go to bed at like 8. I'm an old lady. So, Arabella Stewart was once seen as a potential successor to Queen Elizabeth I and was Queen Elizabeth's cousin. It is said that her ghost stays in the Queen's house on the Tower Green, because there is a house for the Queen there called the Queen's house. According to records, Arabella Stewart married the nephew of Lady Jane Grey, known as William Seymour. Bill Seymour Guts.
He just went by William.
Damn it. Anyways, the marriage was a thought of a threat to the crown, and it did not have permission of King James I, because this was at a point in time where he actually had to get permission to get married by the crown. So Arabella was put under...
Especially if you were royal by blood. You really had to have permission, because you didn't get a choice in your marriage. It was all arranged for political reasons.
They were
neighbor acting up again?
Yeah, no, it's fine. They were scraping the bottom of the barrel, dude. Really.
Well, at that point, not so much. A little bit later on is when it really started. This was pre-Habsburg chin, so this was when there was still enough differency in the blood. Not by much, but it was getting close.
Well, Arabella was put under house arrest at Lambeth, while her husband William was sent to the Tower. Arabella plotted to get William released to travel together to France so they could escape the tyrant, the crown, as it was written. However, William missed the rendezvous. Arabella set sail all alone, but she was recognized and sent right back to merry old England, this time to the Tower. William, on the other hand, set free because he was not trying to commit treason. She stayed there until...
because he didn't escape.
Right. So she stayed in the Tower until she died in 1615 in the Queen's house at the age of 39. It was believed that she was murdered inside the Queen's house and that she did not die of old age. Again, something we can cover on the day that we do the princes, possibly.
But also, plague was still running rampant at the time, so it could have been anything. Because, diseases, and there's no vaccines.
I hate it when people tell me, hey, can I call you later? What time? Later can go in
between. Give me a time, damn it.
5 minutes from now to 11 p.m. I need to know a time, because I'll tell you whether or not I'm going to be dead to the world. Not actually dead, but, So, anyways, next we have the Countess of Salisbury, where yesterday I learned Salisbury is the name of a city, and that's what the steaks are named after.
Was like, where did you think they came up with the name? I don't know. I just never thought about it. Okay.
Didn't.
Pat your pretty little head.
Yeah. Okay, so other prisoners such as 70-year-old Countess of Salisbury, that was ancient for her age, rejected the sentences and fought to the death. She ran from the executioner who chased her down, and subsequently, I'm sorry I'm laughing, this is horrible.
They ended up hacking her to death.
But I'm thinking of my grandmother, who was like 86 and spunky and going, get away from me. And tiny little
She was
legs.
literally running around the platform.
Right. Running for her life. But I just see and playing, you know, in my head. I have to think of humor in these things, guys. I'm not laughing at her. I'm laughing at my brain reimagining the situation if it was a comedic sketch. Just to tell you. Then there's Guy Fawkes, who was our V for Vendetta. He was taken to the Tower of London after his part in the plot to assassinate James I at Parliament in 1605. Imprisoned in the Queen's house as well, Guy Fawkes was subjected to intense torture, likely to the rack in the White Tower. Then we have Lady Jane Grey. That's her actual name. 16-year-old Lady Jane Grey was a queen for 9 days. And she was quite young as well.
She didn't even want it. She would have preferred to have been just, a nun, but you're of royal blood. You don't get that option. So her family had arranged a marriage and shoved her into it. And then her in-laws got this, the male in-laws got this great idea that they're going to go for the throne after her cousin's death due to illness. Again, another rabbit hole I could go down all day.
This is her shtick. When I say it's her Roman Empire, all of the medieval ages is her Roman Empire. Let's be fair. So, that being said, she was overthrown by her cousin Mary Tudor, which she was a horrible person by herself. Mary of Tudor, or Mary Tudor, ordered Grey and her husband to be put to death. She was only 16. Like,
literal child. Yeah. Her husband wasn't, I think he was only 17. So he wasn't that much older than her.
He wasn't. He was 17.
And really there was no real fight for it. Jane was like, I don't want this. I will gladly give this over to you. And London literally, so when Mary rode into London expecting a fight, London turned out open arms because she was still their beloved princess. Because that's how England felt about Mary, because they all loved Catherine of Aragon. So she was still their beloved princess. So they opened her with welcome arms. The mayor met her, was a whole thing. And she's just like, nope, Jane's gone. Again, Roman Empire.
Well, that being said, right before she was beheaded, Jane delivered an eloquent speech to her subjects and to the royal court, and then slowly and really respectfully laid her head on the executioner's block and said, I'm ready. And I was like, oh my God, to have such eloquence. Anyways.
Also, that painting that was done of her execution is not what actually happened, guys. It was entirely a romanticized version.
Again, that's the 19th century, though, for you. They romanticized literally everything. Take a look at Romeo and Juliet. That's another hill that we will not even discuss that, because Shakespeare was a bit of a philanthropist and a beautiful. So, I mean, we can't really say that word. So, he was a Pabst Blue Ribbon. He was a Pabst Blue Ribbon. It's a P word that I don't particularly like, so we can talk about that. I don't drink, so here we go. Anyways, so her ghostly figure has been seen numerous times with her head. She has her head attached to her. She's been seen numerous times, especially on the anniversary of her death. Others have seen her weeping ghost in Beauchamp Tower, but she has been seen all along the Tower Green, as well as walking through the halls or the gates to go to the tower.
Right, because if I remember correctly, the even though she was locked up in the tower, they still gave her access to the grounds for walking, because the guards all felt sorry for her. So they're like, what is she gonna do? We'll let her walk around. We'll give her, she's gonna die anyway, so we might as well give her some little pleasure in the last few days.
She was one of the few prisoners who had severe freedom. She was able to walk and do whatever she wanted around the tower. And I mean, like, my friends over in London can tell me I'm wrong, but the research I did showed me otherwise. You know, that being said, we next have Thomas Becket, who was one of the first ghosts ever to be seen in the tower. The inner curtain wall was still under construction, so Thomas seemed to be very unhappy about it and reduced the wall to rubble with a strike of his cross. An actual cross. So his grandfather, Henry III, was said to be the reason for Becket's death, so he built a chapel in the tower for the Archbishop. He believed that Becket was pleased with the chapel's construction because no further interruptions have been reported after the incident with the inner curtain wall. There wasn't a lot of information on how he died, but just few information on his hauntings. Now, the young princes were Edward V and his brother Richard. They were declared illegitimate by Parliament and sent to the tower afterwards. Edward V was too young to rule. He was 12. The youngest royal I have seen in all of my research from the medieval times was a duke in Poland. I believe it was Poland, and he was 7. There's something to be said about that. Anyways, we're not going to discuss it here today. So, Edward...
real quick. So, Thomas Becket, former Lord Chancellor of Great Britain?
Yes.
He was assassinated in Canterbury Cathedral. So that would explain why
Whoa!
He was grateful for the chapel. Yeah. That's why I was like, wait a second. I went there. I saw his assassination site.
I was going to say, you saw his assassination. Oh my goodness.
I mean, I'm old. I'm not that old. Jeez.
I'm that old. I'm not really. So Edward and his younger brother, Richard, were sent to live at the tower, but shortly after, their uncle was crowned Richard III. What makes the tale so haunting is that Edward and his brother were mysteriously disappeared and never seen from ever again. They are often seen, their ghosts anyways, seen happily playing on the tower green, throwing a ball back and forth, or just chasing one another. It was assumed that they were murdered by the order of their uncle, Duke of Gloucester. 2 skeletons, believed to be the children, were unearthed beneath a staircase in the White Tower, which I didn't go into detail of that. There is ghosts of children that are possibly linked to the 2 princes that are seen wearing night shifts. They were known as shifts, not shirts, shifts, clutching each other in terror in one of the castle rooms. They're also heard laughing throughout the tower. The White Lady ghost is also a massive White Tower ghost. She's one of the oldest and most foreboding in all of the buildings. She is said to have once stood at a window waving at little children down below on the opposite side. Her cheap perfume fills the air upon your entrance into St. John's Chapel, and you cannot find her anywhere else aside from that window on the upper tower or in St. John's Chapel. If I talk too fast, I get hiccups. It's a new thing.
Henry VI. But yeah, so Thomas Becket was murdered in Canterbury. So by not necessarily ordered by Henry II, but some of Henry II's knights, while Thomas was in the church praying, killed him.
Oh, wow.
Like stabbed him multiple times, lopped his head off, like whole thing.
What? No.
Yeah. So like there's, in the stonework, there is marks from their swords. And there's still like a stain there from his blood.
Okay, blood is extremely hard to get out of stone. Anyways, topic for another day. So Henry VI, next on our list, after losing the throne to Edward IV during the War of the Roses, Henry was imprisoned at the Tower and died under, quote, very mysterious circumstances. Most of the people who have died at the Tower that were of royal lineage that are too close to the crown died under, quote, very mysterious circumstances. The rumor was spread that he was thermometer checked to death while praying in the Wakefield Tower. you can see him haunting the Wakefield Tower. There's also a gentleman by the name of Hugh Draper, H-E-W, which I didn't know that was the name for Hugh. But, here we go. Not Hugh like H-U-E, like the color.
Weird spellings, same names.
England has weird spellings for everything, but the one thing I can agree with them on is Herb. There's an H. It's pronounced Herb.
Herb.
Anyways, an innkeeper from Bristol, he was arrested for conjuring evil spirits against Bess of Hardwick. She was a very wealthy lady in Queen Elizabeth I's court. He completely denied charges, and they still killed him. And he's seen haunting the Salt Tower. Alice Wolfe, who was known as a pirate, mischief maker, murderer, and thief, Alice was imprisoned in the tower. And after befriending her prison guards, she became the only woman to ever escape from the tower. And I went on a deep dive on that, and that was fun. Am I going to discuss it today? Absolutely not. However, she was soon recaptured and sentenced to a gruesome watery grave. She can be seen haunting Cradle Tower, Water Lane, and near the Lower Salt Tower. So the Yeoman Warders also have a lot of haunted tales because they are there every day, all day, 24/7, 365.
And because the ghosts are more comfortable around them, they show themselves a lot more.
So much more.
Not to mention their houses are haunted as well.
I found a Reddit thread and I just kept going and I was like, oh my God, some of the stories are horrible. But January 1816, a sentry on the guard outside the Jewel House claimed to have witnessed an apparition of a bear advancing towards him and reportedly died of fright a few days later. In October of 1816, a tubular glowing apparition was claimed to have been seen in the Jewel House by the keeper of the crown jewels, Edmund Lenthal Swift. He was said that the apparition hovered over the shoulder of his wife, leading her to exclaim, "Oh Christ, it has seized me!" Other nameless formless terrors have been reported more recently by night staff at the tower. So they do see ghosts and other,
all the time. Which I'm not surprised that they see a lot of animals, though, because of the menagerie and the zoo that was there for centuries. Because all the animals died there and got buried on the
or they got stuffed, which is sad in and of itself. But there is one.
Some of the taxidermy was hilarious, though.
Tiger one. So other reported ghosts include Margaret Pole, Henry VI, along with a bunch of other dignitaries. Last but not least, of course, I had to save this for the last before we discuss one more topic. There is one entity that is often discussed, primarily by the Yeomans, known as the violent entity. Guards at the Tower of London have reported seeing a terrible crushing sensation upon entering the place where King Henry VIII's suit of armor is on display. A guard patrolling the grounds reported the sensation of someone throwing a cloak over him and suffocating him to death. That's how he felt. He didn't actually die. When he tried to free himself, the cloth was seized from behind and pulled tightly around his throat by an unseen attacker. He was able to live and carry on the detail, but he did not want to continue working there. I don't blame him. Meanwhile, I love a good Reddit thread. I used to work at the Tower of London. Ask me anything. I no longer work there, but I feel like this could be fun and people might be curious about it. I won't be answering questions about certain procedures, obviously, theft, because it's functioning military space. Keep that in mind. There's stuff I probably can't talk about. So from Timely Leachy, anything spooky? Personally, no, but I have had colleagues who claim to see things, but I'm not much of a believer in that sort of thing, to be fair. We have all heard strange noises. There were noises in the White Tower we attributed to the ghost we call Maud. I always say hi to her if I was alone in the White Tower just to be polite, in honor of Maud. Then there was a comment from somebody by the name of Broadway Bean, which I just like. Not OP, but I work there too. The women's bathroom is not open to the public, the one past Trader's Gate. It is absolutely haunted. All of us keep seeing pairs of shoes under the otherwise empty stalls. They would disappear when we opened the door. And that, ladies and germs, ladies, gaities, and thadies, is the Tower of London. I loved researching it because I got to look at all the photos of all the like intricate like costumery. I found this one. Hold on.
I knew you would be like so excited to deep dive it. That's why I was like, no, I want to do it. And then I was like, no, I'm going to let you do it because I know you're going to go down into the rabbit hole and then join me there.
Excuse me. My mic was turned off. This was a coat from the 16th and 17th century. And it's just the intricate like line work and everything like that. And then even like colonial wear and stuff like that. And just like some of them, they have bronze outlines of their horses and just beautiful.
So where the zoo and menagerie used to be, they've created life-size sculptures of the animals that were there, and they have some of like the skulls and stuff inside, some of the taxidermied stuff. But I totally understand where the yeoman that said that the oppressive weight with the armor. Yeah, it is a very large suit of armor, and it was very uncomfortable in that room. That's all I can remember about being there, is because when we went inside the rooms, I was younger. So this was pre 9/11. So I was much younger, elementary school age. And there was a lot of people in the room, so I couldn't really feel much else. There was just a weight though in there. And I wasn't thrilled about it. Like I was like thrilled about all the things, but the pressure on me was not a fan of. So I completely understand how he was like, no.
Well, I mean, my favorite thing when I looked at this was that chapel. On the inside of it, it does not look like it's cut stone. It just looks like one whole. Rachel knows
like they just carved it in place from one piece. Yeah.
I am a slut for architecture, guys. We have talked about this on several occasions. This kind of stuff. Oh my God.
Architecture, there's chef's kiss. Like, it's gorgeous.
Now, some of the suits of armor. So I did work with a sword fighting troupe back when I had first gotten sober. So I was young, freshly an adult, which I think it's stupid. 1920, I worked with a sword fighting troupe called St. Michael's de South. And I got to make Under Armour clothes, like actual, like not Under Armour, like the brand, like padded armor. And like Mike Rowe got
something for the weight to sit on.
Yeah. And I remember I was dating somebody and I brought him to fair and he pissed off one of the guys. His name was Erland, big hefty guy. Loved him to death. He's a fantastic guy. And him and his wife were just so funny. And this is back when they were just dating. And he heard my ex made a comment that I didn't hear. And he goes, here, hands him an old fashioned toothbrush. Just wood, teeny little brush handle. He goes, what do you want me to do with that? Get to polishing. I have an event in 3 hours. Get to work. And I was like, that stuff is so hard to polish because it was nicked. And, you know, the whole thing of I want a man in, I wrote it in my first book, I want a man in shining armor. No, you don't. You want a man in tarnished, dented, rusted armor because he's had his armor tested. And this armor was.
And it's been proven. Whereas shiny armor is brand new, fresh out of the forge, like has never been tested. And like, no.
Right. So I loved researching the Tower of London. I'm glad I was able to steal it from Rachel because I was like, listen, I
don't know so much steal as willingly gave.
I stole it. I took it. It is mine. I am the queen of the Tower of London. No, I'm not. Anyways, I had fun with it, though. It was a lot of fun, and we are unfortunately almost at 2 hours. I had a load of fun with this topic, and
I'm so glad.
I'm so glad you let me do it. Next episode, we're going back to the USA, good old USA. I hope you guys are enjoying the 3 episodes a week for this month, because after Halloween,
it's been rough.
Listen. It keeps buffering and buffering and buffering and buffering and buffering and buffering and buffering. Anyways, so with that being said, have a great Monday, guys. We love you all. As Emily says,
do the stupidest of shit.
Please don't.
Please don't. Do not add or subtract from the population. If you get arrested, exert dominance immediately. I'm just kidding. Don't get arrested. Anyways, stay feral.
Bite the hand.
And we'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye. That's all for this episode. Stay feral, and we'll see you party possums next time.